Good afternoon, Stonebridge. I'm Phil Murray, Assistant Golf Professional, and today we have another installment of Tips from the Pros. Today we're going to be talking about chipping, just a basic chipping setup position and motion that I think will really help improve your game, create some consistency around the greens, and definitely help lower your scores. A lot of things that we see in short game lessons or the clinics are a lot of fundamental errors in the setup position as well as the way we attack the shot, and some things that we can do a little bit better to create better consistency in the strike. So the first thing that you're going to want to do on a basic chip shot is narrow your stance. I see a lot players setting up to the ball with more of maybe an iron base, and even in some cases like a fairway wood or a driver base. And the way I like to explain it is when I'm swinging the driver, my stance and my base is much wider, and that allows me to swing a little bit more aggressively and faster at the golf ball. As we move closer to the greens, we don't really need that kind of stable base or that wide stable base that we would in a driver swing, so we want to narrow things up. So what you're going to see in a little bit in my setup position is a much narrower base. My feet are going to be set up much closer together, and that's in part to help eliminate your lower body slightly from moving around too much, because we don't really need that in a chipping motion. We do, however, need release of your lower body as we come through the ball. So that's another thing to notice when I make the swing, is that I always want to allow my lower body to rotate towards my target. The second part of the setup position after narrowing up the base is the ball position. Generally speaking, in a basic chip shot, the ball position is going to be further back in your stance for a right-handed player towards your right foot, on the inside of your right foot, and for a left-handed player on the inside of your left foot. The reason why we do that, it does help with consistency of the strike, but it's also going to allow you to start to see more consistent distance control once you're able to get this shot down a little bit better. Now this shot is going to come out a little bit lower. It should have some spin on it, which will allow it to check on that first hit and then release out. So you always want to expect this ball to release. And I always try to look at each chip shot as a putt. I want to read the green and try to hit the shot or make the highest percentage swing that's going to allow this golf ball to go in sometimes. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally it will. But the key is we want to get up and down more often. So feet are closer together. Ball position is further back in your stance. The next part is your weight distribution within your feet. For me, and I would say for a lot of really good players, you're going to set up with a lot of weight in your front foot. So for me, it would be my left foot as a right-handed player. So I feel about 95% of my weight is going to be in my left side, and it's going to stay there throughout the swing. We don't want that weight to shift back to your right side, and we see that a lot with some high handicap players. The weight shifts to the right side, and this is to help get it into the air, that's what the thought is that this will help get into the air. But the problem is when you do kind of reverse shift your weight into your back foot, you're going to hit it heavy a lot of the times, or you're going to come up on the ball and hit it thin and skull it across the green. And then the times where you happen to make decent contact, you're not going to really have a decent judge of the distance control. So that's the next part, is weight is going to be substantially in your front foot, and it stays there throughout the entire swing. The last part, and probably the most important part of this setup position, is where our hands are in relation to the club head and the golf ball. So once I take my grip, we see a lot with the hands of a high handicap player are further back, creating a lot of what we'd call a negative angle in their lead wrist, which would look like this. Now, when we get into that setup position, we want to eliminate that by kind of straightening out our wrists some, essentially pressing our hands forward is what we call it, a forward press. And I'll demonstrate that as well. So by creating that forward press, or a much flatter left wrist, or flatter front wrist or lead wrist, that's going to help create more consistency in the strike, as well as induce more spin around the greens. And I hear that a lot, that if I'm not a tour player, I can't spin the golf ball. That isn't true at all. You can spin the golf ball, you just have to get into a better setup position with our hands and keep them that way. And that's pretty much it. The last part I would say is, we don't really want to be kind of jabbing down on top of it, essentially stopping our swing at the golf ball, because that's going to, create some really heavy shots, as well as not be able to get a judge of the distance control. So we just want to allow that club to kind of just sweep along the top of the grass, along the ground, and not jab in so much. And especially in Florida, if we catch a shotter on the greens that is into the grain, if you happen to jab down on it, you're going to be in some big trouble. So I'm going to transfer over to the shot now, but just pay attention to the couple things that I mentioned, and we'll try to improve your game. Okay, so to illustrate what I just discussed, we're going to start with our feet closer together, right? A little bit closer together here versus what a driver stance would look like. Our feet are going to be much closer together. The ball position is going to be further back in our stance, kind of on the inside of our back foot here. We want to have our weight very much stacked in our front side, right? Enough to where I'm basically just standing on one foot. Remember, it stays in that position. It does not move from that spot. The last part was we want to have our hands pressed forward, right? Versus this was that negative angle that I was talking about. This creates a lot of flipping at the ball, and we don't want to do that. So we want our hands to be leading the golf club in the setup position as well as in impact. When I get to that impact position, I want my hands to be leading. This is what helps create spin, control, and more consistency around the greens. And the last part that I had mentioned was I don't want to see that club jab down, right? And being indoors, we can hear it a little bit better, but if I were to do so, we get a little bit more of a louder kind of thump, where we really just want to let this club just kind of work right along the top of the grass. And to do that, we want to keep our head nice and level, nice and high, and our hands nice and quiet. So putting all those things together, feet are closer together, ball position is back, our weight is very much in our left side, and the last part was keeping our hands forward. And we get a nice solid strike that's going to check and release out towards the hole. All right, well, I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Get out there and start working on your short game. It's the only way to really start to improve your game and start seeing some lower scores. It is done around the greens and on the greens. So get out there and start chipping and putting. I hope everyone is staying safe, and until next time, have a great afternoon.